a very serious matter, and I want to make sure that that is addressed here on this program. As we saw, even the governor had to get involved to put a statement out. But again, this California man charged with attempted murder after he was picked up and arrested. I know you're no stranger, obviously, to targeted protests, but look at how far this went. These are the items found on the Maryland suspect. 26-year-old guy from California found with a knife, a pistol, 2 magazines, ammo, pepper spray, zip ties. He even had duct tape and then a bunch of burglary-typed items like a hammer, screwdriver, nail punch, etc. And that's from the FBI, by the way. Your thoughts on what happened yesterday and what continues to happen and how serious this really is?
Well, just thank God that nobody was hurt and that he didn't get a chance to assassinate, a Supreme Court justice. It's important to know, though, that the White House still has not condemned the people being in front of their houses. I don't think it is a First Amendment right to stand and chant in front of someone's house all night long. That's disturbing the peace. They should be arrested and carted off to jail. You can stand in front of the Supreme Court all you want. You can chant and march, but you don't have the right to be in a neighborhood disturbing the peace. You just don't have a right to. The other thing that's important to know here is who else is responsible for the violence other than this person. The person who leaked this is responsible. The person who broke the law is responsible. They need to catch, identify the person in the Supreme Court. Most people think it's a clerk to one of the Democrat-appointed justices. That person needs to be, I think, charged with a crime. They need to be disbarred. They need to be banned from polite society. They should never again work in our court system. They have done this. They had to know, and it was predictable, that they would set off violent protests and violent people from across the country and attract them to this by leaking that, that decision in a way that was never by anybody ever. No justices believe that that was the correct way of doing things. All the rules say that they shouldn't do that. That person bears a lot of responsibility for inciting this.
The severity of the leak, no doubt, as that investigation continues there by the marshal. I did want to ask you if you had an opinion on this. Do you think this would be handled differently if this happened to a liberal-leaning justice? It's hard to find this story about Kavanaugh here as you go through several different media sites. Do you think this would be handled differently? Would this be a top story that would be running continuously? Your thoughts?
Well, think about when the shooter at the ball field almost killed Steve Scalise. I was there that day. We had 4 or 5 people injured that day, including a staffer 10 feet from me who was shot. The FBI refused to even say it was an assassination. They refused to even say that it was politically motivated. They said it was shooter, murder, suicide, murder, and suicide. But they refused to say, even though the guy had a list of Republicans that he wanted to shoot, even though he was yelling out things about this is for health care as the shooting was being unleashed. So, yes, I think there is a double standard. And I think, frankly, look, on Twitter every day, thousands of people think that it's just hilarious, and they encourage people to attack me. I had 6 ribs broken by a guy who hated Donald Trump, hated my politics. I had 6 ribs broken, had part of my lung removed, and every day on social media, there are still people out there saying, oh, yeah, we wish it would happen again, and Twitter allows that to go up. But do you think they'd allow that if this was somebody on the left or a Democrat who had been injured or assaulted by someone? No, it's a one-way street, and people on the right, they don't care. I mean, look, we have celebrities. You got Cher and these other B-list people out there still clinging to fame, out there saying it's a good idea that violence be directed towards people on the right. And I think, it ought to be condemned, but it ought to be condemned equally.
Yeah, I was surprised to see President Biden, not on Jimmy Kimmel, but not being really questioned about this, rather only questioned about the topic. And for time purposes, I'll pivot to that. President Biden on Kimmel. This is him talking about the economy. Here's that, and I'll get your response.
We have the fastest growing economy in the world. We have 8.6 million new jobs just since I got in office. Unemployment rate's down to 3.6%. We've reduced the deficit last year by $320 billion. This year, we're going to reduce it by $1.7 trillion. Right. And so We're the strongest economy, and that's allowed us at least to stay on top of and a little bit ahead of what's happening around the world.
When he's talking about the strongest economy, is he only talking about the jobs report? Is he factoring in the 40-year high inflation, gas prices, supply chain issues, et cetera?
Well, he didn't, or he failed to let us know about the negative GDP growth in the first quarter. Many people are predicting that when the second quarter report comes out, we'll be lucky if we're at zero growth for the year. The jobs being added are sort of a red herring in the sense that the government closed the economy down and destroyed, millions of jobs. Those people are coming back to work as the government is getting rid of the lockdown policies. But I don't know that necessarily there's a great deal of credit or a great deal of success there. The other thing is you can sort of spur growth and spur employment by printing up money. But what happens if people are losing purchasing power? If you have 3% growth, but 8 or 9% inflation, are you really ahead at the end of the day? I saw a statistic the other day saying the average family has $3,300 more this year than last year. But when you add in inflation, they're at minus $1,600 as far as a net, because inflation is eating away all of those so-called or nominal gains that you think you're getting more money, but in the end, you spend more at the grocery store, and that more money is completely evaporated, and it ends up being a net loss.
Yeah, the wages are not matching inflation, as many economists have pointed out, if you go on to read the stories. Before I let you go, I know that you introduced the 6-penny plan, I believe it's called, to balance the federal budget in 5 years. If you could kind of dumb that down maybe for myself, for the viewers as well, how does it work? How could it bring down inflation?
Well, the first thing is there is no other budget. Democrats will not introduce a budget. Republicans will not introduce a budget. Mine will be the only budget, and it will be voted on next week as a privileged motion. Mine balances in 5 years because that's what the balanced budget amendment to the Constitution proposes we should do. Most Republicans say they're for a balanced budget amendment to the Constitution. Most have voted for it, and yet only about half the Republicans will vote for my plan to balance over 5 years. What mine does is it doesn't specify exactly where we take the savings from, but tells you the dollar amount that have to be cut each year, and it becomes our program. It becomes our balanced budget program. It used to be you could freeze spending and the budget would balance over 5 years. Now you have to actually cut 6% a year for 5 years to balance.
This final question for you, and thank you for explaining that. Final question before you go. The House passed this this essentially a gun reform legislation. It would head to the Senate. Where do you see this gun legislation going? Many say it's dead on arrival. Why would it be? Where would you stand on that, Senator?
I think the biggest mistake when we see these shootings is not talking to each other and both parties working together to try to find answers. The Democrats just put a messaging bill forward that is like their platform of take guns from everyone, take ammunition from everyone, but there's no thoughtful discussion of how to try to prevent these shootings from happening. I think there is thoughtful conversation going on in the Senate to try to figure out ways we can stop this. And one of the ideas that's intriguing is if a person has been violent as a juvenile and those records are sealed and not available to the background check, maybe we could save lives. Maybe some of these are kids at 15 are killing animals. Maybe some of them have assaulted another student. Maybe they have made threats to kill students, but they're sealed by the juvenile records. Maybe if we could get access to the background check to juvenile criminal records, maybe we could stop some of these shootings. And I think that's a real actual opportunity to try to do something. But in the House, they just passed a messaging bill. They don't really care about passing it. They really, I think, have made allowed the process to probably be worse by passing what they did.
All right, leave it right there. Senator Rand Paul, Kentucky, joining us live here. Senator, good to see you. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Hey, I'm Rob Finnerty. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please join the conversation in the comments below. Don't forget to subscribe, too. Hit the bell icon to be alerted to breaking news. And remember, there's a whole lot more on Newsmax TV, America's fastest growing cable news network. Newsmax TV, we're real news for real people.